Welcome to the Your Life After Tech podcast. This is episode 3. I'm Debbie Levitt. Don't forget to check out our lifeaftertech.info multiverse, including our book, Discord community, coaching, and more. Because you might be done with tech, tech might be done with you, or you're thinking about adding non-tech work to your tech career. Today's guest is Heidi Araya, HeidiAraya, and she is from BrightLogic.ai. We'll be talking about her journey from many years as a change management person and agile coach, across being laid off at least once, and finally deciding to start a very interesting small local business. Let's get to know Heidi.
Wow, where to even start? I've spent many, many years in tech. The first thing I did in tech was I managed documentation. I thought that was very exciting, and I decided to become a technical writer. So I became a technical writer that evolved into a business analyst, that evolved into a product owner, and then an agile coach. And then finally, I was leading agile transformations all in big tech. And I knew my career was ending. Because honestly, everyone thinks they already transformed to Agile and they don't need directors of Agile transformation anymore. So I was looking for that next thing, and I knew that it was about to fall off the cliff. And so that is my cliffhanger. So do you want me to tell you what I did next?
We will get there. So you worked in tech for how many years?
25 years or so.
Okay, join the club. Yeah. Okay, and I think you and I met at an Agile conference.
We did, and I struggle to remember which one, but I think it might have been the TechWell conference or something like that. They were there because I was doing the conference rounds, probably like you in those days.
I sure was. I was doing the Agile conference rounds. Those will be stories for another day. So you're saying that you started seeing the end being a little bit near when you realized a lot of companies thought they had achieved Agile enlightenment and might not need somebody like you. So when did you start thinking about a shift?
So actually, I knew that my job was coming to an end, even 2019, early 2020. So I just couldn't figure out what the heck do I do next. Then I was laid off from my role leading the agile transformation at a big tech company. COVID hit soon after, and I was like, what do I do? Well, let's do the thing that I know how to do. So I became a consultant for a while. Then I got a call to lead another agile transformation. So I was doing that all the while wondering, what the heck do I do next? Where do I go? I know it's the laggards now that are hiring me, and this is not where I want to be. And I was really struggling. How do I reinvent myself? Once again, I've been very successful for 30 years reinventing myself, and I needed to do it again. And luckily, AI came on the scene and rescued me from probably what would be a very boring career.
Do you mean the boring career of continuing to do agile transformations for kind of late to the party companies?
Either that or an adjacent career like leading big change initiatives. And then I even had a vision of when I was laid off in October 2023, which was the second time I was laid off in 2023. Neither of them was a huge surprise, but still, what was I going to say? I saw AI come on the scene in early 2023. So I knew my career was coming to an end. At the same time, I still had a job, and I started to explore what it would look like. When I was laid off in October of 2023, I decided I'm going to take this data science program at MIT because I knew AI was coming again. And at the time I started that program, I thought that I would end up in the same place leading a large change initiative that was going to be a big AI initiative, leading a machine learning team or a data science initiative inside a company. So when I started that program, I was like, well, at least I'll know enough about the nuts and bolts of AI to lead a team. So actually, that was my vision. But then along the way, I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to be doing the same thing all over again that I had been doing. I'm going to be suffering with all the same issues that I had been struggling with the past few years in tech anyway. So by the time I finished my program, I said, no, I don't want that anymore. I'm going to figure out how to use generative AI and help people adopt generative AI and do something with this big AI thing. So no longer it was about data science programs and working inside big tech, but I had just decided I wasn't going to go back by that point. And Debbie, it was to get to that place, I had to divorce a part of myself. 25 years in tech, my whole identity was wrapped up in that, leading big change initiatives. And I had to take 2.5 weeks off. I put my phone aside and just to really own that this is actually what I wanted to do. So yeah, I just tell people it was like a divorcing a part of myself. It really felt like that.
Was there a particular book you read or process you went through or coach you had, anything that helped you through that tough time of redefinition?
No, I had read all the books. Find Your North Star. Uh, well, multiple books, right? Listen to yourself. I tried meditating. I take walks all the time. I tried buzzing devices. I tried all manner of things, but
Do you mean the
actually none of
buzzing
them helped.
device that alternates the hands?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, I know what you're
Uh,
talking about.
uh, I tried everything to figure out what is next for me, and I was left with no answer. But I think what it really was I was afraid to embrace what it was. So it wasn't like the answer maybe didn't exist. I would have to go back and see all the things that I explored, but I don't think I would allow myself to believe that it was over in tech for me. It wasn't until I took 2.5 weeks off and I went to Argentina to spend time with my family. I didn't have my laptop open all the time. I wasn't checking my phone. I had no Wi-Fi. I just literally was there to spend as much time with my family and not think about any of that stuff. But climbed to the top of a mountain, had some good times, and when I came back, I think I was finally ready to own that part of myself. And I said, it's not about feeling bad about leaving it behind or what will people think about me. All of a sudden, I wasn't worried about that anymore. Somehow previously I was worried about that. Again, I go back to the divorce feeling. What are people going to think of me if I'm not with that person anymore? Here it was like, what are people going to think if I'm not with that career or identity anymore? And so it was like a rebirth for me. But that space is actually what allowed me to reflect and become myself, or who I am more today, I'll say.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful step that you took, and I hope more of our listeners will go for that in themselves. Getting back to your story, it's interesting. You say I had to get out of tech, but you're working with AI. Is that not tech, or how do you define it?
Yeah, it's great. It's a really great question. So generative AI isn't actually that technical, but I knew even from earlier this year when I hadn't really figured stuff out that I didn't just want to coach people on change, because that was the other thing I was exploring is, well, I've been able to reinvent myself multiple times. Well, is it time for me to be a coach and help people reinvent themselves? And then I thought, no, I need there to be something a little bit technical. And so I'm in the space now. Generative AI is not very technical. There are lots of no code tools that you can use. And I help onboard and coach people to adopt AI. And if it requires something technical, I just hire out the work. So I now know enough to help people understand AI, use automations on board. And then if I need to do more technical things, I just hire it out. But it's a great question. I think I found that space in between where it works for me because it's not entirely not a non-technical or technical. So I think one of the pivots that I realized I made, I had a very non-technical role in big tech, right? I was the people change person. So I'll say maybe I'm a little bit more technical than I was then. So I'm providing technical solutions. While I'm not getting into the weeds, but I am actually from helping large companies and working as an employee. I'm serving solopreneurs, startups, and small businesses. I'm from dealing with technical customers who knew a lot more about tech than me. Now I'm dealing with very non-technical customers. So they are struggling just to understand how to even adopt, even though, LLMs and AI isn't that technical, the generative AI aspect. But I'll say, like, one of the biggest shifts also was from being an employee to being a business owner and realizing all the changes that made also. And the last thing for me was, and why I think it's been it's actually been a very challenging shift for me, is I was working remotely for most of my career, and I was engaging from my home around the world with people all over the world. And I didn't have a large local base of people that I knew. And so now I am a local business owner where I am serving local small businesses. And so these shifts have actually been pretty interesting and fascinating for me to just realize and absorb on my own self.
So, when you talk about serving local businesses and small businesses, for example, and I'm going to make something up and you're going to feel free to tell me I'm wrong. So, does this mean, for example, a local accountant comes to you and says, I've heard about them, their AI things, how can it work for me? Is that the type of work you're doing, or please correct me?
Yes, it could be real estate agents. I'm working with a handyman agency. There are insurance agencies, yeah, accountants. It could be really anyone. So I actually can collaborate well with marketing agencies who want to offer more technical solutions. They often do things like social media engagement for their clients. And so that's a really good pair up. So yeah, absolutely.
And I know a lot of people who get into freelancing or entrepreneurship or coaching always wonder, should I bill by a project price? Should I bill by an hour or time? You don't have to give us a number, but can I ask how you tend to bill or price?
Absolutely. I never bill by the hour if I can help it. If somebody just wants a one-off thing, I try to bill by the value that they received from it, because billing by the hour, of course, you're just tied to the number of hours you can work, which is not good for them or for you. And then you're incentivized to make things take longer because you can bill by the hour. So it never made sense, but with AI, it's making even less sense, right? Because maybe I can build an automation that would save 100 hours off of someone's plate every month. And so to them, that might be very worthwhile versus, someone else might not be willing to pay that. So yeah, I bill by the project and I give a fixed rate for the project. And then if I need to provide some kind of support along the way, then I will give like a fractional support rate for that.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you for putting that out there. One question that I've been asking everybody on the show is, if you think about your core personal qualities, your personality traits, who you are deep down inside, how does this new business match or overlap those?
I've always wanted to help people. Like deep down, that's the most basic thing that has been constant throughout my entire career. And either I was helping them, I was helping them find clarity, I was helping them find a better process. It was like really essentially my career has been about process improvement, although very people focused process improvement. And so I always want to help people find a better way to do things so that they are happier. For years, my sort of tagline was alleviating misery in the workplace. At least to myself, I was helping people feel better at work. So my qualities, it's really that. I think it's very customer focused. I'm driven to find a solution for someone that works for them. And so if they can't afford the big thing, let's figure out what we can afford to make your life better in that way.
Got it. Was there any mistakes or regrets when you were, because it sounds like you've really started this business in the last year, because you said you got laid off in October 2023. We're talking in October 2024. It sounds like all of this happened in a year. Any mistakes or regrets?
So actually, I really opened up my business May 1st of 2024. So it's not been that long since I've been out there. So mistakes or regrets, no, I can't say that I had any mistakes or regrets. I think the thing that would have shortcut this really would have been for me to understand myself sooner and embrace the fact that it was going to be over in tech. I mean, but I didn't even want this. Debbie, I thought I was going to go back to tech. And so when I took that program, I was going to be an employee. I never wanted to work for myself. So this is the other message I wanted to share. It's like, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted a job that I enjoyed where I could provide value. But with everything going on in the marketplace, number one, that the tech layoffs continue, it's still very tough out there, matched with my feelings about tech that kind of rose to the surface after I left, because I was allowed the space to think about all the toxic environments I'd been in and all the people I was told not to talk to and do this, do that. And I had no budget, a lot of staff, no budget. I couldn't buy anything. I had no permission to do anything. And then I thought, you know what? I didn't really like it, but but yet I saw no path forward. So this was literally the only path that I saw for me to do what I want, which was work with generative AI, helping people use generative AI, and not be miserable at work every single day. So it was literally the only thing that I had left. It wasn't because I wanted to be an entrepreneur or work for myself ever.
Well, given that you kind of tumbled into where you are now that you're about 5 or so months into this new business, what do you think of your new boss?
So, uh, one day I woke up and I thought to myself, am I still acting like an employee? Or maybe that's a bad term. Am I still acting like I'm going to get the phone call rescuing me from this situation where I'm going to get a bunch of clients or a bunch of work coming my way or somebody's going to pay me for something? And then I thought, you know what? I have to do more. So I am loving the new person that I am. I'm loving the person that I'm becoming, because it's a constant growth. I had to learn a lot about what it takes to run a business. And so, yes, I love this new me. I have a lot more growth, and I can't ever imagine going back at this point.
So you're coming into kind of your first half year of your business, and you've been talking about developing some local clients. What are your next dreams of growth?
So, along the past 5, 6 months of talking to people, both local business owners and people that I meet along the way, because it doesn't have to be local business owners. I just felt like that would be a good niche for me to start and a good place for me to start to engage with the local community and provide value. So I learned that many of them are struggling with sales. They're struggling with the sales process in some way. And this is actually something that I never contemplated. In big tech, no one had exposed me to the sales process ever. So all of a sudden, I hired a sales guy, and he's telling me all this stuff like, you got these, you got to I have a whole stack now. I've got a stack of business cards in front of me. You've got to add them to your CRM, even if it's a Google sheet. Just you have to get back, you have to follow up with your leads, and you have to email them, and you've got to do this, and I'm like, what the heck? This is so manual. Like this process doesn't make sense. And he's like, well, I can do cold calls. I can do them. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, because he's got 12 years of sales experience, and he's awesome. But like the sales process seems broken. But then talking to other businesses, they needed help getting leads, following up with leads, getting sales, something in their sales process. So that is what is coming next for me, is where I'm focusing on improving the sales process for service-based businesses. And so that's the area that you're going to see me focus next, because AI can take a lot of the drudgery off the plate of businesses.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. Yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll have to keep an eye out for you. Something you could put on your website in the future.
Yes, indeed. Yes, my website is going to be undergoing this revamp to focus on that as well. Yeah.
Cool, exciting. So thinking about our listeners and viewers who might be considering leaving tech or staying in tech or adding non-tech work or being more entrepreneurial, what advice would you have for them?
Well, the advice I would have for them is, if they already have a hobby that they enjoy and they know maybe that they could explore that more, then try it out, because diversification is going to be very important in an uncertain world. So that's actually another thing that I have a whole other talk about, is thrive by world and what you need. So find some way to diversify. So I would definitely encourage folks to dig in there. And the advice I have is figure out what your sales pipeline will look like, because that was the one thing that I didn't think enough about, is like, how am I going to map out how many customers I need to make whatever monthly revenue? So have a monthly target goal for yourself, even if it's low to start, and then figure out how are you going to get those customers, and have a strategy for getting those customers. So that would, the previous me would have really appreciated someone speaking to me about that.
Super, thank you. That is good advice, and definitely goes back to ideas around budgeting, and even remembering that a new business may start small. We can't just say, oh, wow, I'm going to make $2 squillion in our first year. We have to remember that these things grow over time. Usually there's a last question that I ask everybody, but it sounds like you might have a couple of other topics you wanted to make sure we touched on. Was there something you wanted to talk about?
Um, well, I think some of the things kind of came out naturally. Like, I think it's a big step to leave big tech. We get paid really well. We have, well, presumably steady paychecks. The world is becoming more and more uncertain now. And so, one of the things I want to tell people is, again, diversification is important. So, think about it. Even if you're still employed right now, think about ways you can diversify your interests and your income. And then the other thing that's really important in an uncertain world is going to be community. So, if you work in tech and you still have a job, don't forget to find people to collaborate with, to support, because if something goes awry, then you'll have your community to support you. And even, you and I met at an event, and all the talks that I do, I often get invited because people know me from the community. So community is another big thing that I'll say is really important. So the other thing is that I see this more and more. I mean, the world is becoming exponentially uncertain, which means that companies are hiring and doing layoffs. And so, yet another friend just told me that her company she started a few months ago, or actually two friends in the past couple of months, they started new companies and immediately were told that the firm is going to be acquired by private equity. And of course, that introduces, all the instability and more layoffs, and of course, all the changes. And so, we can't expect that the world is going to be stable anymore. And so I think going forward, companies will begin to rely more and more on gig workers. And so that means if you're in tech and you're not upskilling, whether it's in AI or whatever the latest thing is, then please start now to think about how you can make yourself relevant for now and for the future. And that predominantly means AI, because if you haven't started learning AI, then it's going to be hard for you to be re-employed, because employers are looking for people who know AI. So less experienced people who know AI are getting jobs over the more experienced people who aren't leveraging AI and haven't dipped their toes in yet. So that's the, I would say other advice that I would give along the way.
Yeah, definitely good advice. I have to say, AI isn't something I've gotten heavily into only because of my area of tech. There aren't a lot of strong solutions yet that are doing a good job. We still have there are solutions out there, but they need babysitting. They're still hallucinating way too much. They're not most of them are not saving us time. And so I think for my particular part of tech, which has been CX and UX, a lot of us haven't been getting as much into AI or generative AI because it's still been a bad assistant.
Yeah. And I think that it will improve, but I think it's about finding the space to continue testing. Like, last year it was terrible with some things. This year it's amazing at those same things that it was terrible about. So like every couple of months, just keep exploring what's changed with the new models that come out. So maybe with the newest model, things have changed. So whatever it is, there are going to be people on the forefront of what you're doing, exploring what that is like. And so then for those people in your same position, to just make sure that you're on the forefront and keep testing, because things change so fast there.
Yeah, it really is a great point. And I think about some of the things that we try to do with AI in UX and UX research is, can it hear an interview almost like this and summarize it well? And the system I'm using for my podcast software, it isn't giving me the greatest summary, but in my coaching sessions with people, I for those who consent, I've been uploading it into a system that is designed for therapists and psychoanalysts. And that is doing a great job summarizing that conversation. Why? Because there's a lot more on the line there, and they had to really develop good models and whatever, what do I know about AI? But they had to do something there where it could not spit you out a half AI asked summary of the conversation. The conversation had to be extremely accurate. And so it's a good reminder that there are other tools out there and that it's always evolving.
That's actually really interesting that you found that tool, because I had the same feedback from someone who tried the common meeting tool called Fireflies.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Fireflies, but I typically never read the summary that it spits out. I just run it through my custom prompt, my custom scenario, and then it generates me a draft email in my email inbox. So then I open it up and I go, oh, okay, I want to change this, I want to change that. But But yeah, of course, there are lots of fine tuning that probably happens on the therapy end. So they probably had to do lots of, like you said, extra stuff to make sure it worked out, not just for general scenarios, but because AI works very well with very narrow scenarios, because that's where it was trained on. It probably does a really great job there.
Yeah, if I can just talk about it a little bit more, there was one other interesting thing that the system does. Hashtag not sponsored. You know, I'm not sponsored by them. And when people talk about different companies or people, it puts them in a separate place in the summary. It says, okay, these are people and companies and places that were discussed. And I posted this to LinkedIn, and one of them, my dog had interrupted a coaching session I was doing, and the thing said, Olivia. Olivia is a dog who interrupts the session. And I was like, wow, that's kind of, I looked back at the transcript and I just said, oh, sorry, my dog is bothering me. She seems a little hungry. And the transcript, the summary thing, it said, Olivia is a dog who interrupts the session for a moment of levity.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Yeah, that sounds like a one I'd be keen to try out too and run my transcripts through it.
Yeah, again, hashtag not sponsored. It's called Upheal, Upheal. And again, maybe there's somebody better out there and maybe there's somebody worse out there. I'm not sponsored by them, but it's been a system I've been testing out and playing with. And so far, I haven't seen a system do a better job with summarizing conversations. The only downside is because it's meant for mental health, it'll add things like client does not seem suicidal, and you're like, whoa, what? I wasn't going there. We're just talking about design. But thanks for
But
letting me take what?
uh, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to thank you for letting me take you on a little side journey there into some of the ongoing weirdness that we still see in AI in 2024.
Yeah, but going to that, what you said about the client does not seem suicidal, like that's actually pretty fascinating because the AI can detect different emotions, perhaps, or I'm just curious, and I don't know how well those work, right? But maybe it's not only the spoken words that the client might say and detect some of those feelings, but also the emotion that comes through on their voice. So I train AI voice assistants for people. And so one of them is this handyman who wants the AI voice to pick up when he can't answer the call and he's in a meeting or he goes to a lot of networking events. So he wanted it to pick up there. And it does have a setting. And I tested it out and called it and acted angry, like he had messed up something on the job. And it's just very empathetic. And so AI can do lots of things that is really kind of fascinating these days. But I also think it will make mistakes, and that's where
Sure.
I find people tend to look at the Chat GPT or the Claude or whatever the AI they're using and think it's a Google search and it will have accurate answers. And so, yeah, I always caution people, don't, if you can't check the answers yourself, then probably you shouldn't trust the answer.
Always a good point as well, even as AI continues evolving. So this is kind of my closing question. So if there's other things you want to talk about, let me know. But I like to ask people, how can people get in touch with you or follow you online? Or maybe they want to hire you because they've heard this and they're excited about what you might do. Where do we find you, Heidi?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. You can find me there at Heidi Araya. And I do have a Facebook group called AI Productivity Pioneers. So if whoever's listening is one of those people who hasn't dipped their toe into AI yet and they're curious about it, you can find us there. On Facebook, we have monthly meetups live where people can ask questions and we focus them on kind of like the newbie version there, and it's entirely free.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, and we can also find you at BrightLogic.ai. And I hope people will check you out there and whatever you're doing. So I like to give the guests the last word. Anything else on your mind?
Because this is life after tech and AI seems kind of techy, but really there's a lot that about AI today, that generative AI that is not technical. And so yeah, I just want to share with folks, if you haven't tried it, you don't really need a technical mindset at all. In fact, I think the people who have non-technical mindsets do best with generative AI because they're not expecting it to be some predictive output. So yeah, just try, experiment, and I'd love to hear what people's journey with it is.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Heidi.
Yes, you're so welcome. Thanks for inviting me. So excited that you invited me. Thank you.
It's whatever, and it's never. Is it better?